lap dances for the big guy.
He's joking around. Who feels so good when he jokes?
What's this company called?
And boom, we are live. Welcome, folks, to the American Movie Podcast. If you've never been here before, I go through movies, news, documentaries, Netflix series, Netflix originals, and I do books. And today's book, I'm not going to sugarcoat, this was sad as fuck. It was The Poisoned City, Flint's Water, and the American Urban Tragedy. Let's see if we can put this up there. There, that's what it looks like. Boom. By Anna Clark. And so this was really sad, man. So this goes over the water crisis that Flint endured. And if you don't want to check out the book, I implore you just to check out 10 minutes of, it's available on Netflix too. So if you're watching both videos, I'm going to go over both of those at the same time pretty much. So it's called Poisoned Water. It's on Nova. It's a Nova episode, and you can see it there too. If you don't want to read the book. The book was excellent. It's about 200 pages, and I finished in about, I don't know. I didn't persevere through it just because it was pretty devastating, like going through it. But you can go through it in like a week. It's like 200 pages. It's not bad. Read 15 minutes. So I'm going to put that down for a second. Okay, so it goes over the history of Flint. The United States infrastructure is pretty old anyways. So Flint was really old, man. So Flint was a prosperous town, and it talks about the history of Flint, and it goes over, I'm going to try and keep this short, under 10 minutes. So its infrastructure was to support a huge population, and then GM left, a lot of companies left, and then so all of that maintenance cost was put onto the people of Flint that resided there, but half of them left, and it's a poor community. So 80% of the population there makes under $40,000, and then 40% of that 80% makes under $15,000. So they were charged, around, this is all according to the book, it was around $140, I think, or something along those lines. So this was it was a devastated population. It had old infrastructure, and had poor communities, and it was going over the history of it pretty much. And so I don't understand. No one, I don't think anyways, from the research that I did, went to jail for this. And I am appalled. This is the United States of America. And there's inclination that this was about saying, hey, the water's safe. It's good. Totally don't worry about it. It's totally good. You see the mayor, Dane, up there and just drinking the water on television. And then multiple parts throughout the years, they come into contact. There's inklings, and there's proof that the water is full of lead. And it wasn't only just lead. They got Legionnaire's disease and E. coli and all of this stuff. Like, there was bacteria in the water. They weren't using anti-corrosive or chemicals inside of the pipes. So if it's the law. So if a population's over 50,000 people, they have to use anti-corrosive pipes. And if they don't, all of the contaminants inside of these lead pipes, they're already lead pipes. Like, a lot of the United States infrastructure, especially the service lines, maybe not the main lines, are lead. And so they got this stuff called scale that's on the inside. And it creates this protective barrier between the water and the lead. So they use this anti-corrosive stuff so it keeps that scale intact. And they weren't using it. And that's when you get to see the brown water and this highly toxic water, man. And I'm just checking my connection. That's why I paused for a second. But this was so sad. And lead poisoning is irreversible, especially in kids too. So I mean, it's one thing to read about horrific war stories, but when you get to see these civilian families and kids, like, it's devastating, man. It's just so sad. It's one of the saddest books I've read, man. And it was totally out of, it was irresponsibility. And these people should have been, dude, I can't believe, I'm blown away. So that was a tangent. So it was just like this a lot of it was with policy too. So after the Clean Water Act, the government debuted, I think it was $17 billion to, revamp and sustain the water systems and sewage systems. And then in 2014, the amount of money that was allocated towards that now, or most recent, is $4.3 billion across the United States. So there's that policy in there, and then people had rising rates. So this is why Flint decided to take over the water system. Flint's used to get their water from Detroit, and it was very, very expensive, and people were complaining, and it's a poor population. So they were in control of this emergency manager. So this emergency manager is put upon, I believe, by the governor. And so the mayor has nothing to do with it. This emergency manager, who's a consultant pretty much, and is trying to get Flint out of this economic strife, decided to make deals with the KWA and to switch from the Detroit water service to its own water service, the KWA, and use Flint's own plant and take the water from the river. So there's this myth that the water from the river is, toxic, and it's not. It's for sure needs to be treated differently than a lake, but it's not. It's not super toxic anymore. It's just the system and the circuitry that takes the water to the people is just old. And so there's like the main lines versus the service lines that go into the houses. So the main lines go into the roads, and then the service lines go into the homes. And there's some friction between who has to take care of that, because it's disruptive, it costs money, and is that service actually part of the homeowner's purpose or the city service? So there was that too. So there was a whole bunch of things going on simultaneously that hit it, and it was just so sad, man. I'm going to go over 10 minutes for sure. So yeah, it takes a long time to replace these. It raises the taxes. It's really, it's disruptive, and the accountability between the service lines and the main lines, city and homeowner. I would say that the city has to take care of all of that, because what's the homeowner going to do? They're just going to hire a third party, probably the exact same third party, maybe. I don't know. But, and it talks about how this was created in like 1919. GM was a big city, or GM was a big contributor to Flint's economic growth. So, it created its own housing company, and it had private homes for GM employees. And so it had ethics inside of this, and it was to keep housing applicable to only white people. So there was this segregation that GM had used in the 1919, according to the book, The Poison City, that it literally said in the deeds, hey, do not sell this to colored people. And if a realtor shows this to a colored person, then you'll lose your license. And person of color. Well, that's what it says, quote unquote, in the book. That's what the deed says. So it was systematically put in place for these people, and a lot of the GM employees were white people, and then the lower tier levels of GM, so like custodians and stuff like that, jobs were given to black people. So you couldn't really afford to get in there anyways. So that systematically put people separately, even though GM was a big contributor to their economic prosperity. So this book, and if you watch the Nova one, Leanne Walters, she's a big icon in this. And I think she won an award too, and for helping this. But it talks about her family, and her home was considered ground zero. And they tested her water, and her water had some of the tests had 13,000 parts per billion of lead, and the average was 2,000. But 5,000 parts per billion is considered toxic waste. So she was bathing her children and all this stuff in toxic waste. And the city said, hey, no, it's fine to drink. It's fine to drink. It's an anomaly. We can't use those tests. The tests that we use are applicable to the EPA. your tests are wrong, they were used wrong, the data sets are skewed, and it's only 1 point in the system itself. So, and how Flint actually, so there was some insidious stuff that they left out. They left out like high tests when Flint tested. I believe it's Flint, something along those lines. And if I get it incorrect, please correct me. So they did this tactic which they call flushing. So they ran, before they tested, Flint tested, they ran the taps for 25 minutes. And then they used small mouth containers. And why the small mouth containers is important is because in order to get the water inside of the actual container, it has to be on a lower flow. So the pressure and plus the flushing doesn't strip the contaminants or the lead or push forth a lot more lead. But it's no one flushes. It's a poor way of testing, and it was used to skew results pretty much. But yeah, like, so she had twins, Leanne Walters, and both of them stopped gaining weight. One of them, lead is toxic. So lead acts as calcium, or the body thinks it's calcium, so it puts it inside your bones, and you get lead poisoning. And it also disrupts your neurocircuitry system. So when you have a neuron needs calcium to fire. So the body thinks calcium, or lead is also calcium, so it slows down the neurological processes that these kids had, and he was having trouble speaking. And it's like, this is permanent damage. Like, it was so bad. It's hard, like, to get an emotional reaction from a book, and this was just like, Jesus Christ, man. So yeah, she was a big center point around this in the book and in the Nova documentary called The Poisoned Water. That's on Netflix too. So yeah, he was developing problems with speech, and pretty much the entire thing was just, it was a whole mess, and people did try and hide some of the data points. And I think the governor or whoever employed the emergency managers and the people that turned the other cheek are absolutely culpable, because these lead poisoning things, they carry generationally. So this lead is it's passed down, it's kept in your bones. So pregnant women or women who become pregnant, they use the calcium in their bones in order to pass along to the baby fetus. So it's like this irresponsibility in order to cut costs, in order to keep the people happy, and just kick the can down the road, ruined a lot of people's lives. And it still is. I mean, I looked at it, and some of it is better, and I'll put a link down below. It's called the United Way Genesee. It's United Way, GENESEE.org. And it'll be in the link too, in order if you want to donate or do anything like that. And the infrastructure of the United States is entirely antiquated. It's old. It's so crazy. And for every dollar spent on water and sewage, it brings back $2, over $2. So the investment is so worth it, but it's just long-term thinking, and it's invisible. It's below us, so you don't think about it. But so Brita claims to have, it removes 99.9% of lead. So if you just get a Brita pitcher, or you get water bottles or glass bottles, preferably that have filters, use those two, and just make sure that, you're being safe and being smart about the water that you take in too. So if you're worried about it and you have old service lines, I think if your home's older than 1986, you're okay. But I would still use a filter any type you can, as much as you can. So that was The Poison City. Let me know what you thought. I think it's an important book, and I think it's important that you don't forget about it, and that those people, I think it's important to have not retribution, but some sort of justice brought to those people, man, because those people already had it rough. So So yeah, this has been Matthew Benjamin with the American Movie Podcast. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below, or follow me on social media and let me know. So that was The Poison City and Poisoned Water with Nova. So thank you so much, folks. Until next time. Bye.
After all, someone has to pay for the lap dances for the big guy.
He's joking around. Feels so good when he jokes.
What's this company